The car buries itself into the wall at nearly 190 miles per hour. Metal folds instantly. The radio goes dead silent for a beat too long. 90 seconds later, something happens that matters more than the crash itself, and almost nobody outside a closed hauler door will ever know exactly what was said inside. 3 days after that impact, 2 drivers were summoned into a room together. No cameras, no live audio. Just 2 men, 1 meeting, and a rivalry that NASCAR itself couldn't seem to control. What we do know is what happened after that door closed. This didn't start last week. It started 2 years earlier, and the fuse has been burning ever since, one incident at a time, until it finally reached a point NASCAR could no longer ignore. Shane Van Gisbergen, the 3-time Supercars champion, arrived in NASCAR and won on debut at the Chicago street race, instantly becoming one of the most talked about names in the sport. On the other side stood Austin Hill, a Richard Childress racing driver, built on short-track grit and years grinding through the Xfinity ranks. Their racing styles were never going to blend quietly, and it took only 1 season for that tension to surface. The first flashpoint came at the Circuit of the Americas in 2024. An off-track move by Van Gisbergen over Hill drew a 30-second penalty, dropping him from P2 all the way down to P27. It was the moment their racing styles collided for the first time, and it didn't go away. That single penalty planted a seed that would take 2 more years to fully grow. That's when this channel, NASCAR Insider TV, wants to pause for a second. We're closing in on 1,500 subscribers, and if you're following stories like this one, hitting subscribe helps us keep breaking down the moments NASCAR would rather move past quietly. Now, back to the story, because it only gets worse from here. Later that year at Sonoma, Van Gisbergen lunged past Hill on the final restart and took the win. Then he drifted his celebration burnout right next to Hill's door, filling his windshield with smoke in full view of the field. By the time the clip made the rounds online, the reaction was already split down the middle. Some saw it as harmless disrespect. Others saw a line being crossed that shouldn't have been. Van Gisbergen later admitted it himself. In his own words, he said he felt a bit bad about it, and admitted it was, in his phrasing, in some ways being petty. But when asked afterward whether payback for Cota was fair game, his answer was blunt, 100%. Hill's response was just as cold. I plead the 5th. We'll just go on to the next one. Good hard racing. Fast forward to 2026. The rivalry, dormant for a stretch, reignited at the Naval Base Coronado Street Course in San Diego. Hill's car clipped the inside wall and ricocheted directly into both Trackhouse cars, Van Gisbergen and his teammate Connor Zilisch, ending both of their races on the spot in a single moment. This was no longer a personal grudge between 2 drivers. It had become a team versus team issue, and Trackhouse now had 2 separate reasons to remember it heading into the following weeks. The question hanging over the sport was simple. Does Van Gisbergen let it go, or does he remember it when the moment finally comes back around? That moment came at Chicagoland Speedway in July 2026, on lap 47. Hill, running 28th, was defending his position against Van Gisbergen as the field spread out through the corner. In turn 3, Van Gisbergen committed to a deeper corner entry line than usual. SMT data later confirmed he drove in far deeper than typical before lifting off the throttle. Hill, entering slightly higher, tried to slide down to block him from the position. The contact was direct. Van Gisbergen's nose found Hill's left rear. Hill spun hard into the outside wall, and his race ended instantly. 37th place, his second DNF in 3 weeks. Asked about it afterward, Hill didn't hold back. I'm sure y'all have seen the replay, so if I have to explain it, people probably need to get glasses. But the story wasn't finished there. Before going behind the wall, Hill drove his mangled car back onto the track and sideswiped Van Gisbergen's car under caution. A deliberate door-to-door retaliation carried out in front of the entire garage. Then came the radio evidence. Hill's spotter, Derek Nealand, was heard saying it was just Van Guggenheimer. It was payback for California. Team owner Richard Childress confirmed it himself over the radio, calling it just payback for California, a direct reference back to the San Diego incident weeks earlier. The team then told Hill to stop talking about it on air for the rest of the broadcast. Van Gisbergen's public response was calm, almost dismissive, when reporters asked him to explain his side. I was shooting for the bottom, trying to get clean air. I was so tight, and he just chopped my nose and got in the wall. So, sorry about that. Sorry to his guys, they're always nice people, and it happens. Two accounts now stood side by side. Childress publicly calling it payback, Van Gisbergen publicly calling it nothing more than a racing incident. Neither side backed down from their version of events in the days that followed. Then came NASCAR's response, or the lack of one. After reviewing both incidents, Tuesday's penalty report showed no penalty for either driver, despite SMT and radio evidence suggesting the wreck may have been intentional retaliation. NASCAR's Mike Ford explained the reasoning behind the decision. We want to have a discussion and make sure that it doesn't boil over into a significant problem at Atlanta or beyond. We looked to see if there were any anomalies throughout the race, and something that spurred this that maybe was payback from earlier. The double standard didn't go unnoticed by fans or media. Ryan Preece was fined $50,000 and docked 25 points for intentionally wrecking Ty Gibbs at Texas, specifically because he vocalized his intent over the radio beforehand. Hill and Childress arguably did the exact same thing over the radio at Chicagoland and received nothing in return. NASCAR insider Steven Taranto noted that officials treated Hill's retaliation under caution as just an emotion thing, citing NASCAR VP Elton Sawyer, who defended the lack of punishment by saying, "I would have done the same thing 30 years ago when I was a driver." The following week, at Echo Park Speedway, NASCAR summoned both drivers to the hauler for a 17-minute closed-door meeting, the very scene this story opened on. Van Gisbergen's own quote afterward was dry and telling, "I don't really want to do it again," describing his first-ever trip to what reporters called NASCAR's principal's office. Hill kept his comments clipped when reporters pushed him for details outside the hauler. "NASCAR let us know what we need to do going forward. We're going to go race and I'm looking forward to it." Reporters even tried needling Van Gisbergen afterward, jokingly asking if Hill had been grunting during the meeting, a callback to Van Gisbergen's earlier comment that Hill doesn't really talk, he just grunts. Hill didn't take the bait when the comment reached him. Then came Van Gisbergen's most revealing quote of the entire saga, one that summed up exactly where things stood between the two drivers. "I'm probably a bit more reserved than him, but I'm aggressive on track, I guess. You are always going to clash with people like that. I don't know, I'm not going to back down or be threatened by someone, but I don't want to fight anyone either." NASCAR's message to both drivers was simple. Respect needs to be earned between these two. Whether that message actually landed is something nobody outside that hauler can confirm with certainty. The pattern is now fully on record. The COTA penalty, the Sonoma burnout, the San Diego pileup, the Chicagoland wreck and door slam retaliation. No penalties issued by NASCAR, and a 17-minute closed-door meeting that resolved nothing anyone outside the room can verify. Van Gisbergen says he won't back down. Hill says almost nothing at all. And that silence has a history of ending in a wall. The next time these two share a track together, it wouldn't take much for lap 47 to happen all over again. So here's the real question worth asking. Did NASCAR let this go because it's genuinely a racing incident, or because this rivalry is good for ratings? Drop your answer in the comments below and share this video with anyone who follows this story closely. If you enjoy real NASCAR breakdowns like this, you'll like what's coming next.